This is the second video in the series of anonymous videos in Israel. I'm currently working on a number of great leads, and I hope that this series has potential to bring to light a number of interesting stories. But before I move on to those of other people, I wanted to tell a few interesting stories of my own. The last time I was sitting in a park talking about my brief encounter with the very strange world of scam moving companies that exist in Israel. And another story that I think is worthy of recounting is the story of writing a book under a pen name about Israel that has gone on to sell a few copies. It's not turned into an international bestseller of sorts, but you could say the book has bought me a few burgers and beers over the course of the past few years. The book is called Just Get on That Plane, Aliyah and Why You Need to Make It Right Now. A few friends generally people have questions when you publish a book under a fake name, under a pen name. There's a few things I want to say about that. Firstly, this was an experiment in pen name publishing, eponymous publishing. It's been a thing among writers for many years, and I think we're living in a golden age, or golden era, if you will, in which people can publish their stories anonymously via Amazon, which exposes them to potentially massive global audience. Now, people use the pseudonym device to write stuff like erotic material, erotica. I think there's way more potential in the pen name device these days on Amazon to tell stories that you couldn't tell with your real identity. A lot of people are using that mechanism to tell very interesting stories. The reason that I chose to use this personally, I wanted to write a book that was encouraging people to move to Israel. There's a literature of such books. There's literature of videos and stories like that, but I have what I thought was an interesting idea, which was doing so in a manner that was as insulting as possible to the readership. There is an enormous industry, that probably makes it sound bad. It's a very positive thing in order to encourage Jews to move to Israel, which is known in Hebrew as Aliyah. There's organizations, but usually they depart from the premise that, moving to Israel is amazing and everything in Israel is amazing, which is true to an extent. But what I thought about with this book was, well, what would happen if we tried to present the typical Aliyah messaging, but we did so in a manner that was kind of startling and that would almost grab readers, grab their attention from their first page. And the way I tried to do that was, as I said, by actually going out of my way to be as insulting as possible to those people who might be picking up the book. I've had conversations when I publish the book. One of the difficulties of writing a book under a pen name is that it becomes obviously difficult to do stuff like press interviews and podcasts. When I was creating this kind of persona as the author, I thought in my naivete that the standard thing to do was to really go to town on this sort of alter identity, right? Because if someone wrote a book and was supposed to be a real person, they'd have to have maybe a website and a Facebook profile. So I really went the full 9 yards on doing all that stuff, and then later figured out that that wasn't really the expectation or something considered necessary. For people who sort of have questioned whether this book was a prank or a joke or it's fake or whatever, I would say that Yaakov Yanky Greenspan, who presents himself as a sort of, right-wing American immigrant to Israel who grew up in the New York area. And I would say everyone has multiple strands or facets to their personality. Greenspan is one facet of my personality. Clearly, there's a lot of places where we diverge, including where we grew up. But the core messaging, the core message articulated in Just Get on That Plane, which is the idea that every Jew or the Jewish people belong in Israel, that is a belief that I actually hold. So we agree on the core message. Would I personally recommend insulting the readership or lashing out at people living in Miami? No. But I thought it would be entertaining, and I would say that my authorship of this book has become something of a open secret among the sort of relatively close-knit community of people advocating for Aliyah. So it's not something that I've been trying that hard to disguise, but it's been interesting. Just Get on That Plane has not made the New York Times bestseller list. But then again, as any author will tell you, making books or selling books is a terrible way to attempt to make money, and that was never my intention going into this. There's a couple of things that I think the wacky experiment of writing a pro-Aliyah book under a pseudonym has taught me. The first is that, as I mentioned, it was kind of a proof of concept. It's very possible to publish authorship these days through Amazon using a fake name, if you want to put it crudely. I prefer the term pseudonym or pen name or author name. I think that's really fantastic, and I could definitely see myself doing it in the future. And the second reason was genuinely a pure reason. My envisioned readership for this book, and someone was writing an article for the Jerusalem Post summing up the latest Aliyah books, and they I did that interview under the sort of identity, but I explained that my sort of core mission with this was, even if a few people consider just getting on that plane because of that book, for me it was a whole worthwhile endeavor. The book, as you'd expect from a book that sort of is insulting and condescending and patronizing, while sort of encouraging at the same time, has definitely been mixed. Some people have kind of caught on to the rough humor in it, and others have been just perplexed by it. Naturally, the book has received a small amount of reviews on Amazon. There's people who've loved the book. I've also got emails that people who've absolutely hated the book. The persona I had in mind writing the book was actually not somebody themselves considering moving to Israel, making Aliyah, just getting on a plane. It was actually their family members who might be living in Israel, and they're looking for the frying pan equivalent of a book, something to hit their nephews or whoever, their grandsons with, in order to try to sort of shake them up and invigorate them with the messaging about making Aliyah. As uses of my time go as a writer myself and someone really interested in content creation, and as I mentioned earlier, and I really wanted to emphasize as someone who really believes in the core message of the book, that since the foundation of the state of Israel, this is the place for Jews to be. I accept that not everyone in the Jewish world is pro-Israel. Not everyone can just get on that plane and make Aliyah, which is certainly something I would concede is not in the book. But nevertheless, for most people who can do it, who want to do it, I think that Israel is the place to be. If you are considering this brave life decision, or you are the family member, you're living in Israel, you have some family members who you know are amenable to the idea of making to Israel, despite the hatred upon the Jews of Miami and their condominiums in Florida, and the generally insulting tone of Just Get on That Plane by Yaakov Yanky Greenspan, I encourage you to pick this up. It's available in paperback format. It's also available as an ebook. There are many ways to get it, and as Yaakov Yanky Greenspan himself would say, it's always a good time to just get on that plane.